Lesson 3, Part 2 of the PPL Navigation and Flight Planning exam. One of the two beasts. We've gone through a lot of stuff in this. Between this and the Air Met exam, these are the two toughest exams that you're going to do. Everything else is relatively easy after that. The 1 in 60 rule is the one that most people talk about. It's used as a rule of thumb from a navigation point of view constantly. So we're going to go through this in some detail. And at the end of this, and with all the other lessons and parts, you should have enough information to get through your exam. But it all comes down to the familiarity around that E6B. So let's crack on with the 1 in 60. Now, back in lesson 1, under the definitions, we defined the track error to be the angle between the required track and the track made good. The track error will either be identified as a number of degrees left or right of the required track. Now, the closing angle is the additional angle or correction which must be made to the track error to regain that track. It's the parallel and the closing angle. So if you've veered off to the left to 1 degree, the closing angle is the angle that you need to be able to regain a vector to take you back to your desired location in the remaining distance that you need to cover. So the track error is the distance between the planned track and the deviation due to windage or off course. The point at which you make the identification would be B on here. And at the point of D, you need to be able to make those corrections to get back to the required track using the closing angle to get to your desired location. So track error plus correction angle is the total correction required to regain track. And again, this slide is from the lesson 1, I think lesson 1 part 2, which is the definition. Now, it's important to understand what the definition is because you can get an exam question on this. So the 1 in 60 rule: if we are 1 nautical mile off track after 60 nautical miles, our track error is 1 degree. To put this another way, distance off divided by distance gone equals track error divided by 60. Important to measure all distances along the track required, not the track made good. On the navigation computer, all we do is we line up the distance off track, because it's distance, it's on the outer scale, with the distance run on the inner scale. And the distance run will always be a timed element, so anything time-based is on the internal wheel. And then the track error sits above, oh my god, that spelling's terrible, sits above the 60 triangle on the inner scale. Now, little note here, I did have two exam questions on this. I had one that was, well, actually I had 3. I had one which was this highlighted line in blue, in green. Distance off divided by distance gone equals track error divided by 60, because you kind of need to know that. If you've got the ASA E6B, you can find reference to that on the sliding scale. There is a little an off-course correction part on the ASA's E6B, and it's at the very top of the slide rule, which is, again, it's a good reference thing. So having the right E6B in the exam because you're allowed to take them in and it's allowed to have the information on it. You're just not allowed to make any additional markers to it. So having that reference stuff is on, and I also had two course correction questions as well. So try and picture this picture in your mind to always understand what the correction angle is, the track error. Okay, keep those in mind. So I've boxed this in red because this is what you should see probably somewhere on your slide rule if you've got the ASA. It's not on all of them, but these two triangles that you see here is a very accurate visual representation. So when you're doing track error questions, it's quite easy to just draw these things up on the piece of paper and replace the algebraic symbols to the numbers that you need to be able to do, and it gives you just that second way to be able to confirm corrections. So we're going to spend the rest of the time just running through some questions around this and make sure that you understand how it works. So just to recap, the formula is distance off divided by distance gone equals track error over the 60, right? Keep that in mind. The track error, all we do is we line up the distance off track on the outer scale with the distance gone on the flight plan track, not the track made good, and that's important. So certainly in some of the accompanying material that you get, that can be a little bit hazy. So the track error will always sit above the 60 on the inner scale, and this is the angle at which you would parallel track. So that gets you to a parallel course. So if we've flown 80 nautical miles and we are 2 nautical miles right of track, then the distance off would be 1.5 degrees right. Okay, so the left and the right, very important. The closing angle, all we do is we line up the distance off track on the outer scale with the distance you want to regain the track by on the inner scale, and the closing angle sits above the 60 on the inner scale. So if we have 40 nautical miles to go to intercept the track still, but we're also still 2 nautical miles off track, the distance of 2 nautical miles to go and 2 nautical miles distance off track and 40 nautical miles to go would give us a closing angle of 3 degrees. Now the total correction excuse me, is gained by adding the track error and the closing angle together, and we'll find the total correction required to intercept track. If we had a track error that is to the left of the total correction, it would be to the right to regain. So if you veered off to the left, you know you've got to veer off to the right to get back on track, and vice versa. If your course correction, because you veered off to the right, you need to come left. And again, that's why drawing that little triangle, or those 2 little triangles, your track error and your closing angle, will give you the ability to just reconfirm, is it to the left, is it to the right? So what we'll do is we're just going to go through these questions and we're just going to redo the math. And if we do it parrot fashion and you get used to it, it sounds daunting. It's not. It's relatively easy once you get it in your head on how you do it. Right, so using the formula, track error, distance off gives us distance gone, which is relatively easy. So the first thing we need to do is find out what our track error is. So we know that we are 1 nautical mile to the right of our planned track, and we have travelled 30 nautical miles So therefore we've got everything we need to be able to give us our track error. So if we've 1 nautical mile to the right and we've travelled 30, whatever our answer is going to be in degrees will be to the right. So distance off goes on the top, and distance travelled is on the bottom, and we line up those two numbers, and I'm getting a track error of 2 degrees. Hope you are too. And remember that if its distance off is to the right, then the track error will be to the right. So that's the first part of the calculation. And then the second part, in order for us to get our closing angle is that we take the distance off on the top again and the miles to go, so the distance to intercept, which is 20, and that gives us 3 degrees. So we've got pretty much everything now, but all we need now to do is understand what our total correction is. Now this is probably the highest caliber maths you're going to do. You're going to add the track error to the closing angle. 2 plus 3 is 5. And the track error is to the right, and the distance off track is to the right, so the answer is going to be to the left. It's going to be the opposite because we need to go the other way. And that gives us 5 degrees left. Not hard, really, eh? But let's do it again. So, distance off track, 2 nautical miles to the left. So that distance off goes on the outer scale. The distance travelled, because it's based on a time-based thing, you have travelled X in so long, and we know that we've travelled 30 nautical miles. So 30 on the bottom, 40 on the bottom, 2 on the top, 3 degrees left. Left because we've already gone left. We know that we are 3 degrees to the left of our intended track. Easy. So the next one is, we take again the distance off and the remaining nautical miles to go. Gives us 2.4 degrees. And then the toughest bit, add it together and reverse the left or right. And what have you got? Because you should have 5.4 degrees right. See, so if we just keep doing this, it just gets very, very simple. So, the next one, distance off track. Distance off always goes on the top. Distance travelled always goes on the bottom. So we've got 3 over 75. It's to the left, gives us 2.4 degrees left. Now, we know that we're still going to use the distance off. So 3 at the top. And this time the distance to intercept. So that 3 goes over the 40 and gives us a closing angle of 4.5 degrees. Add the 2 together. 2 and 4 is 6, 5 and 4 is 9, and it's to the left, so we want to go to the right to get back. Gives us 6.9 degrees right. Okay, let's do the next one. We are 2.5 nautical miles to the right of our track, our planned track, and we have travelled 20 nautical miles. 2.5 on the top, 20 on the bottom, gives us 7.5 degrees. We're off course to the right, so the track error is to the right. Distance off track over distance to intercept, 2.5 degrees. Add the 2 together and reverse the left and right, 10 degrees left. See, it's not that hard. As long as we know the distance off track and the distance we've travelled and the remaining distance that we need to cover, this is just very, very simple. But get used to it and get used to doing it quickly, because in a real world scenario, if you've only got your E6B up there and you're flying around and you've lost visibility, it's quite important. Not to mention, to get through the exam, you're going to need to know this. So, next one. Distance off 4 nautical miles to the right of the intended track, and we've travelled 50 nautical miles. Gives us a total of 4.8 degrees to the right. Within variance. Remember, you're allowed a tolerance because you're working this out on an E6B. And then we take the distance off over the distance to intercept. Will give us our closing angle, 9.1. Last bit, add the two together and reverse the left and right. 13.9 degrees left. So, you work through the next couple, and then I'll fill in the blanks. So 3.5 degrees, 3.5 nautical miles to the left, distance off, over distance travelled, will give us our track error. And then all we need is the distance off, so the distance distance off, distance to intercept, will give us our closing angle. Add the two together and you get the total correction. Within a 2-point margin either side. What did you get? You should have 10.5 left for the track error, 3 degrees for the closing angle, and 13.5 degrees right for the total correction. Okay, let's try it again. We have found ourselves veered off 5 nautical miles to the right, and we've travelled 40 nautical miles. Which one goes on the top? Which one goes on the bottom? That will give us our track error. Okay, should have done that. Now we've got the distance off and the distance to intercept, and that will give us our closing angle. Then add the track error and the closing angle together, and that will give us the total correction. Okay, let's see how you did. Track error should be 7.5 degrees right. Closing angle should be 6.7 degrees. And when you add the two together and you reverse the left and rights, you get 14.2 degrees left. Okay, 2 to go. 1 nautical mile left for distance off track, and we've travelled 125 nautical miles. That will give us our track error in degrees. Then we take the distance off track, and the distance to intercept will always give us our closing angle. We add the two together. Now you may be looking at it going, oh, I can't tell because it's so small a deviation. Just again, interpolate the best you can. Right, you are given a 2-degree tolerance. So, 1 nautical mile left, 125 nautical miles travelled gives you a track error of just under 0.5. So that's 0.48 left. Then distance off over the distance to intercept will give us our closing angle, which is just under 1. And the total correction gives us a 1.28 degrees right. Now, if you're still having problems with that sort of guessing and the variations, practice, right? Just keep practicing. It'll come. So the last one, 4.5 nautical miles to the left, and we've travelled 10 nautical miles, and that will give us a track error of 27 degrees left. And we take the distance off over the distance to intercept. That should give us just under 10 degrees and 9 degrees. Add the two together, reverse the left and right, and you get the answer. Easy. Once you've done it a couple of hundred times. Okay, so that's the 1 in 60 rule. It's not a tough one. It's just understanding how to do it. And if you've got the visual aids on your E6B that says distance off always needs to be on the upper, the other goes on the lower, and you're always looking above the 60 to find out what those angles are. This is the last part of the PPL navigation. You should have everything you need to be able to pass that exam now. So get out there and pass it. Leave comments once you've done it. I'd love to know your feedback. But don't forget, like, subscribe and share. Get it done. Good luck in the exam. I know you'll do well. The next one, we've had some great feedback on the flight radio. A load of people have taken it now, and I've got some lovely comments about that it's helped them pass, which is beautiful. It makes me very happy, and it makes it worthwhile keep doing this. So I do want to hear from you, and I do want to hear your results. And also anything that you think I should have gone over in more detail, please let me know. That'd be good to know. Good luck with the exam. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get that information out there. The next one we're going to be doing is air law, which is always a fun one. Anything you can to keep awake through those, because it's going to be painful, but we'll get through it. Best of luck to you all.